Virtual Machine Sequence Part 5. Okay, we added in some logic that I mentioned earlier to prevent extending a cylinder if there's any possibility of interference, mechanical interference, or collision. So we start here with cylinder 4, and I've added these two instructions in there that says you cannot extend cylinder 4 unless cylinder 3 is retracted and the output is not turned on to extend cylinder 3. So that's kind of like double insurance. And then we also, up here for extending cylinder 1 and 2, you cannot unless cylinder 3 is retracted. If cylinder 3, and you could add in that cylinder 3 is not energized. You could put in and not output whatever cylinder 3 is. You get the general idea. So there's cylinder 1 and 2, there's cylinder 4, and here's cylinder 3. For cylinder 3, we have cylinder 2 has to be retracted and the output has to be turned off because one of these happens faster than the other. So if you were to turn on extend cylinder 1 and 2, you would instantly de-energize the solenoid for cylinder 3 and it would retract just as fast as this would come in and hopefully avoid a collision. Now in your logic, you shouldn't have any logic that should cause this. These are just little machine safeties that I typically put in. As a matter of fact, I do that first before I do anything else. That way when I go out on the shop floor, I'm not bending things in the machine and having the operators and maintenance guys go, oh, he really knows what he's doing. Save yourself some grief. Just do that stuff right away before you even go out there. That way, if the sequence doesn't work, at least the cylinders won't be extending and running into each other. Let's give this thing a whirl. First, let's roll through here and see if anything is turned on. Well, the finished product conveyor is turned on, and that's because the downstream call B320/3 is on. Now it's off. And we extended solenoid 5, which is fine. Okay, so everything seems to be clear. So we're going to use our poor man's HMI here, and we're going to say that we see a part. We got a new part Q, and now we're waiting for photo I2. So the new part Q cleared out before we hit photo I2. Well, that's good because that's what we wanted it to do. So let's go in here and put in photo I2. Because that's a clue to help us remember how to do the sequence. So let's try that again. Well, we know the first part works. If you don't push that part off the conveyor within 10 seconds, it clears it. So we got a new part Q. We hit PE. We push the cylinder in. It's at the end of stroke. Cylinder 2, drill motor's on. I turn off PE2. We retracted. Boring was complete. I knew you wouldn't see that. Part at cylinder 3 into stroke. And it's still there. And guess what we're waiting for? I mean, it's right there in front of us. Finished product conveyor is running, right? And cylinder 5 is extended. It was before we started. So we're waiting for PE3 to come on. So let's turn on PE3. And remember, part at PE3, I eliminated that. I deleted that. So I'll just go delete that right here. Remember, that was the one that was just, if the input's on, then you got a part at PE3. It wasn't being used in the logic, so I deleted it. Now, let's go look to see where the part's at. Okay, this is our clue right here. True if off, that means that PE3 is on, which it should be. So I should go back up here then and add that in here. And I see now that's why I probably had that in there. So I'll go to this wrong. We cleared it at end of stroke. Finished product conveyor is running. It's extended. So I'm not sure whether I want to put it after or before. So I'll just drop it in there. PE3. You notice how that nifty display comes up, and when it highlights what I want, I just hit enter, enter. It's done. Okay. So let's accept this. And we have a part at PE3. Now remember, you're controlling the photo eyes. That's the real challenge here, is to get this to work right, but to get you to work right too. So we got a part at PE3, right? So let's try another part. So we flip on photo eye 1. We got a cue. Then PE2 sees it. It pushes it in to cylinder 2 into stroke, drill motor on, 4 extended, retract 4, boring's completed. We extend cylinder 3, part at cylinder 3 into stroke. Okay? Now, it really can't go any further, because if we have a part at cylinder 3 into stroke and a part in front of PE3, then we got 2 parts on the finished product conveyor, right? And we got to get rid of this one right here before we can let that one move on. So let's just go down there and look. See, part at cylinder 3 into stroke, and then we have PE3 blocked. You can tell because this is true of off, and because it's on, it's false. Okay, so we got 2 parts in there. Let's try a third part and see what happens. So we block photo eye 1, and I forgot to turn off photo eye 2. See, I screwed it up. So I don't know if it'll work right now or not. So we got a part at cylinder 2 into stroke, even though I screwed up my photo eyes. In other words, I left on PE2 from the second part. And fortunately, it worked out okay anyway. So I see now I have 3 parts in here. I have a part at cylinder 2 into stroke, a part at cylinder 3 into stroke, and a part in front of PE3. That's basically the way the thing's supposed to work. Let's see, finished product conveyor. We don't have downstream call in here, so let's put that in here. You see the nifty little thing comes up, the type forward downstream call, it's highlighted. Enter, enter, and it's in there. The downstream call, we've got that operating off of input 3. So if I turn on input 3, what would you expect to happen? I would expect cylinder 5 to retract and release that part. So we'll see what happens. Okay. So input 3, we turn on the downstream call, cylinder 5 retracts, and now we have to turn off PE3 because it left, right? It's on the moving conveyor. And we still have a part at, now the finished product conveyor is running, right? The part at cylinder 3 into stroke, it's now moving to PE2. So if we turn, PE3, if we turn that back on again, and it's still calling, see, it cleared it. And it let the part that was at cylinder 2 into stroke now go to cylinder 3 into stroke. And when we clear PE3, as it's moving downstream, finished product conveyor is running, we turn PE3 back on to say that the part has arrived there, which means it's no longer at cylinder 3 into stroke. And it moves right on through for the downstream call. As long as we have a downstream call, we've got the finished product conveyor running. And that, folks, is how she runs. Next, we're going to do a little modification that doesn't really change the sequence so much as makes it a little bit more real world-like. And to do that, we're going to have to go offline because I need to create a new program file. If you go over here and right-click, new is grayed out. Okay, let's save this while we're thinking about it. Save as, and I'm just going to say, I'm going to go offline to make these changes. Okay, so here's what we're up to. I added a branch around. Remember, the timer timing pulse is keeping this sealed in for 1 second, so this would be on for 1 second. We went back to the B310 bits, but we're not latching them. They're just there. They're labeled station 1, step 2, so forth. As long as the timer timing is holding this on, it's also holding that bit on. If we go to our new routine outputs, if we're in the auto mode and that bit is on, then we trigger the barcode reader. If we're in the manual mode, then a touch object on the HMI or a button on the HMI, when pressed in the manual mode, will do the same thing. So we could test our barcode reader from the HMI. Now we don't have an HMI and we haven't added the logic to create auto manual mode yet. Finalize that and go back to the main routine to do the next one. The next one to change would be to move this output function to the output file. So we have to place in here a bit that we're going to use in the auto mode. So we're going to use B310 and then go to the output file and we add this rung. Notice these two rungs are basically identical. Keep in mind that B320/0 would actually be a digital output, except for the fact we don't have enough outputs on our controller that are wired up to do that. So that one remains B320/0, but this one is now output 0. So when station 1, 2, B310-2 is energized, in other words, we replaced an output with this B310-2. In the auto mode, it will turn on that output, or in the manual mode, we have a new bit that's associated with something different on the HMI screen. This was B312-0, this one's B312-1, and it's connected to an object on the screen that would say extend cylinder 1 and 2. It wouldn't say push button, it would just say extend cylinder 1 and 2. So we'll finalize that. And then we had you create another new routine called sensors. I think we use ladder 8 for that. We're going to put our virtual sensors in that routine. Finally, we made a whole bunch of changes. We added the sensors routine, and in the sensors routine we put the rungs that had to do with the end of stroke sensors, the virtual sensors that don't actually exist. We moved the machine safety conditions into the output files instead of having them in the logic. That cleans up the logic a little bit. In other words, these are the instructions here that prevent you from extending a cylinder if something's in the way. And in general, we went through and cleaned up some things. We put in a timer to turn off the conveyor if nothing's happened. Let's say that we were running the finished product conveyor, which we would be right now. Keep in mind that we're offline. But if we were online and cylinder 3 is retracted, there's a downstream call, and T416 is not timed out, then the conveyor would be running. But 15 seconds later, if nothing had interrupted input 0, PE1 new part, or PE2, or showed up and sitting at end of stroke cylinder 2, or sitting at end of stroke cylinder 3, or arrived at PE3, after 15 seconds of that, this would go false and turn off the finished product conveyor. What gets it running again is any of these conditions go false, this resets, that goes true, and the finished product conveyor starts up again. So there's probably more that could be said about this code. The reason for doing the output file, now remember that the barcode trigger would be a digital output and the finished product conveyor would be a digital output. Drill motor, we made that an output because we had output 4 not being used, so I kind of just switched it over. But here's the deal. Anytime you get called out to a machine to do maintenance on it, it's going to be because something didn't do something. The operator will say, well, it just stopped. Well, what's it not doing? What's it waiting on? They look in there and they see that there's a part ready to be pushed out onto, we'll say, the finished product conveyor, and there's not one already sitting there, so it should push it out. You see one sitting in front of photo I3. So you go in here and you look to see why cylinder 3 didn't extend. None of this has anything to do with anything other than this single bit right here. You would be in the auto mode. You'd be looking to see why B31016 did not energize. To do that, you right click on it and hit cross reference. Then you go look for the OTE. It's in rung 11 of the main file. Double click on it. It takes you right to that bit. So here would be the logic that tells you why cylinder 3 didn't extend. Well, it's saying that they're we're offline, so this is almost irrelevant. But it's saying that there is no part at cylinder 2 EOS. Well, if there's no part sitting at the end of stroke cylinder 2, there's nothing to push out. So it's not going to push out. Okay, so let's say you look in there and you see a part sitting in there. Now you're going to say, okay, why didn't this turn on and extend cylinder 3? So you right click on this, go to cross reference and go to the OTE for that memory location. Go to sensors and you can say, so it's saying that these two aren't met. In other words, cylinder 1 and cylinder 2 are not extended, therefore there was never a part. So you see what I'm saying? You go to the output file, you find out what's not happening, and then you work your way backwards.